Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Saturday. We are doing our live discussion for Magical Girl Society's June book pick, Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. I am Breana, one of the co-hosts of the Magical Girl Society. You can find me at Milky Booze here, and I'm joined by my other co-host, Monica Kim.
Hi, pals. Also, sorry. The reason why we're late is because of me. I maybe fell asleep. But I'm awake. Awake now.
Yes, it's been a comfy weekend, so I too was napping, so just all good, but we are here. I am so excited to talk about Raybearer, because if you guys follow me on Twitter, you'll see I said that I loved it. Before we even jump into thoughts, a quick synopsis of what Raybearer is. It follows our main character, Terasai. She has been trained from when she was a child by her mother, who she calls the Lady, to one day meet the crown prince of her region right, because it's a conjunction of like 12 countries kind of in one of her region, and to kill him the moment that he accepts her as his own, and they love each other. So she finds that once she meets this boy, she doesn't actually want to kill him, and she has to try to decide between whether she can fight her fate to her destiny to kill this boy, or she can battle it and come out on top and keep everyone that she loves happy and in her life. And this is not even a good explanation of this book. I'm still rolling from my thoughts of it. But if you want to start off, Monica, about what you thought. You have the UK edition too. I see it.
I do. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Look at that. Look at that. It took me a while to realize that there was a face right there. But looking at it in the camera, I'm like, how did I miss that? Anyways, I love this book. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait for Redemptor. Need it immediately. Yeah, I just feel like everything about this was so good. You had an amazing protagonist, and then just amazing characters in general who were so believable, and you just so deeply cared for them. And you had such a fun plot that had so many amazing twists and turns, amazing world building and magic and lore. And I just wanted to get so lost in this story. I just loved it so much, everything about it. And the relationships, I loved being in this book so much. So yeah, I loved it. 5 out of 5.
Yes. I went on to Goodreads and Twitter and posted something very dramatic and said that this is my favorite book I've ever read in my life, which I don't just say about books. There's a lot of books that I like. I've never said that specifically about anything, and I went online and I was confidently like, this book whooped my butt, and I was obsessed. And everything you said, the characters, the world building, the magic system, the whole system of the crown prince and his 11 his council, the relationships between all of the characters. It was so invested from page 1, which rarely happens for me, especially with fantasy books. That
Same.
First book in a fantasy series, I'm very rarely hooked from page 1 because I feel like there's a hurdle for learning what's going on. But I think Raybearer also did a great job with balancing the world building with actual storylines. So I never felt like there was just overwhelming info dumps or too much happening at once where I just didn't know what was going on. And I think for a book that's so rich in world building and introduced me to a lot of mythology, folklore, terminology that I didn't know prior, I think it did such a good job with putting me in that world and making me invested. And I was reading it on my breaks at work, and I would come back and I would tell my coworkers, I'd be like, you guys, this book
so
is
good.
Life, and I need to go home to read this book.
It was so good. And it's wild because it is, like, if you think about it, a really dense fantasy. Like, there's so much world building, there's so much new happening. Like, there's a whole cast of characters and like what's the dictionary glossary at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of world building in this book, and at the same time it never feels dense. Like, it never felt like you had to push yourself, at least for me. Like, it never felt like you had to push yourself to like continue reading. And like you were saying, like, it was somehow incredibly engaging from like page one. Like, I was fully sucked in immediately, and I'm like, I don't know what magic is in this book, but it's so good.
And I feel like also a lot of times with a big cast of characters, there's always some characters or like some character dynamics that I'm not as interested in reading about, or that kind of fall flat for me. But I feel like whenever Tarisai interacted with anybody, like no matter which storyline we were kind of following, I was always really excited to see a character come back into the story and be reintroduced.
Same.
And I feel like the jumps in between because some of it shows you the past, like with her growing up with her mom and stuff, and yet peeks into other characters' backstories. I thought it was really well done and interesting, and I was invested in every character's individual story, which I feel like is so rare for me. And
I was really surprised by like how much she fleshed out certain like side character stories.
My dog just asked to go outside, so I opened the door.
Oh, okay. No worries.
But yes, I really do feel like everyone had such a unique backstory. They all have something unique to Tarisai's story as well. And I don't know, I also liked figuring along the way like what real life country in our world each region was based on. That was super fun too. And I don't know, I just every character I was so interested in, and finding out how they were all interconnected or like how they meet each other. It was also super fun.
I will say that the only complaint I have about this book is that there is a long list of characters who are on the council. And I feel like I kind of wish we had gotten, not that I needed like a full, like in-depth time with each of them, but I just kind of wish that we had like been more introduced to each of them. Whereas I feel like we got a couple, we got Kieran, and I forget like one or two others. And I just kind of wish we had just had a moment to like sort of meet everybody. That was the only thing I kind of wanted, but it wasn't anything that like took away from the book or whatever. It was just something that I was like, I just want a moment to meet everybody.
Yeah, there were a lot of council members, I feel like, that were a glimpse of like major character traits. More, but I also feel like because of the sequel being what it's going to be about, I won't say anything, but I'm going to see a lot more of everyone as the story continues. So I feel like this story focused a lot on her on Tarisai's relationship with like the current council members. So it's like the older generation, and I feel like we're gonna get to see the kids' generation blossom in the next one, which is pretty exciting.
That's real. Shall we start with, or Monica making me sleepy? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to control my yawns. Let us know what you all thought. We have a few people. Danielle said, read it for a virtual library book club a few months ago on 5 stars. Love that. Ashley didn't love it quite as much, which is fair. Didn't want it enough. That's fair. I've been in that place before where it's like, the story is good, but like you're just, for some reason, you just don't connect. I get that. I've been there. I'm trying to think of like non-spoilery things to discuss. Going into this, I didn't realize that it was like a fairy story. What's Tofu up to? Bye, Tofu.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
She was just getting all of her squeaky toys at once, so I had to
No, I love it.
invite her into the living room.
I love little tofu moments.
But yeah, I also didn't realize that there were gonna be like fairies or like magic in the
Yeah.
being introduced to those characters. I was
You know what this book actually kind of reminds me of? Like, if I were to recommend this book to someone, I would recommend it to someone who really loved like books like Spinning Silver or The Bear and the Nightingale. And like it's nothing like those worlds. Like it's not wintry like that, but those books did such a good job. And I'm like maybe also Starless Sea, like those books that do such a good job of like sort of bringing you into a world and like making it like while you're reading it, making you sort of like have that feeling of like, oh, magic is real. And I feel like this book accomplishes that in a way that like is so hard to do. And I wish I knew how authors did it. But oh my gosh, it's so good.
And
Um,
ooh, I love the found family aspect. Me too. Found
yes.
family is my favorite trope, which is how you know something is wrong with me. There was that tweet. My child is fine. It's like your child's favorite trope is found family. And it's true.
That's real.
Favorite trope. Which
Yeah.
the flavor in this, the found family flavor is exquisite. I absolutely.
It is so good. I loved Tari Sai as a character. I loved getting to like watch her grow up too and kind of have that understanding of like where she came from and like the things that or the reasons why she like was the way she was or like like made the choices that she did. Like I never felt like it always felt like every choice she made sense for like
I agree.
who she was at the time, which I thought was really well done also. And then also just in general, like I loved her leadership qualities and just like I don't know, there's like something about her character that felt so unique to me. And that like we weren't just told that she was like badass or like a good leader, but like we were actually never really told that, but we just like watched that. And I thought that was so well done. Kind of the opposite of what you get in a lot of other books where you're kind of just told about this character being like, you know, a really good leader or something. And yeah, I loved that. Loved her.
Yeah, Tori Sai, it's not often too that main characters or like the POV character is my favorite character.
Yeah.
And I'm very attached to her.
Yeah, I love her.
I feel like even when she made decisions that I was like, I couldn't even be mad about it because I feel like I really understood where she was coming from and why she was making those decisions. And I feel like this is a good to jump into spoilers.
Yeah.
Why? Because
I'm ready. Spoilery time.
All right. And about Tari Sai's upbringing, I loved how much we get to see parental-child dynamics in the book. And I feel like there was a lot to be about, like the Sanjeet's character too, and his relationship with his dad, and Tari Sai's relationship with her mom. Obviously, both parents were neglectful, abusive, in many ways, doing wrong by their children, and yet they have this long, like Tari Sai and Sanjeet have this long conversation about how even after all of this and all your anger and resentment, you can't just let go of a person.
Yeah.
Toss them out of your life. And I thought that was such a good discussion that the characters had and such an eye-opener as to why they both react to things so differently and so viscerally. It was just so beautifully written.
Yeah. Her relationship with her mom, with the lady, was like so interesting to me because like I feel like Jordan did such a good job of like making the lady, like obviously she's a villain and she has done horrible things and never presenting it as like, oh, but like, and like she has also like a really horrible, like sad story. Like when you first find out her story of like being the sister of being a Raybearer, it's like, yeah, of course she wants revenge. But then like you think about what she's actually done and you're like, okay, but that's still not okay. And I feel like the author does a really good job of like balancing that of, you know, saying like all this horrible stuff that happened to her, not okay. And like she is a whole person, but at the same time, like the things that she did, like never justifying it.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated that. And I also like that's such a complex relationship for Tari Sai to deal with too, because like her mom is also her enemy. Um, but at the same time, still like a person that she loves. And I felt like that last, oh my gosh, the last like page, just bawling, just tears. Because it's like she just kind of let her mom have that moment, which I thought was like so, it showed so much kindness. And maybe her mom didn't deserve it, but I also feel like Tari Sai deserved that moment, like deserved to have like that sort of soft moment with her mom, even if it wasn't true, you know?
Mhm.
I don't know. Just so good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love when books present villains that not I don't want to say like sympathetic villains per se because I feel like that, but villains where if this book was written from their perspective,
Yeah.
you wouldn't think of them as the villain in their own story, you know? And I feel like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
grown up with the lady, got all of her backstory, and found out that she wanted to kill her brother who threw her out on the streets, you'd be like, you know what? That's valid. All because
Yeah.
of an ego trip.
I
um,
mean, like if she hadn't done like a few select things, I would have been 100% on her side. I would have been like, yeah, let's all in, all in with the lady. But she made a few choices where I'm like, no, not all in.
her relationship with Wooen as well,
Yeah,
extremely interesting, and how her legacy with him kind of continued into Tari Sai's hands as she took on not the burden per se, but like the knowledge of how people become redemptors and how the treaty works and everything. That I thought that was such an interesting side story, and I wasn't expecting
yeah,
at the beginning for Kathleen and Woon to be
not
major
at all.
characters at all, and then
Yeah, I just thought they were going to be like side bad guys. So I like that whole development, so good and so interesting. Um, yeah, it just like built out everything to make it much bigger than ever expected.
yeah, I just think like every character that was introduced to us was made into such a useful, like important character, which I feel like isn't always the case with big casts. Like you get some throwaways here and there, but everyone who's
Yeah,
used in a like important way ended up being important later on in the story. And I love that like Yeun, the character that we saw when is first like introduced to the public as a council member,
yeah,
is to go into across the I can't remember exactly what it's called, but into the underworld essentially as a
yeah. Hmm.
how she comes back to at the end. I love full circle a lot of these plot lines became, and how full circle, and they're also giving you a peek of what's going to happen in the next as well, especially when at the end when you find out that Tarisa is going to become a redemptor to give up to try to end this whole thing of having to send 300 children to the end of everything.
Yeah,
And that they're like, oh, who are you going to get to teach you how to go through the underworld? And choosing Mulan, she's going to choose the 11-year-old girl who braved the underworld last year alone.
yeah,
And it was just incredible. I love that these characters that we're introduced to who are important to Tara's story at a certain point in her life come back to continue to be important later on. I really enjoy how that's all woven together.
no, I agree. I really loved the way that they brought her back and had her be, because it would have been really easy. I feel like in a lot of other books, we would have a character like that be sort of used as like a wake up call moment, like basically as a plot device, and then like never really heard from again. Um, and I feel like in some ways, like having her come back and having her be, I'm assuming going to be like training Tari Sai or being part of her training. I don't know. I feel like there's something sort of almost subvertive about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really liked that. We have one comment.
I don't know if this was the one you were looking at. I was just
Oh yeah,
reading.
yeah.
Yeah, yes. If you don't agree with them, you understand them. I feel like that's definitely what Monica was saying too. You were mentioning how the lady's past isn't an excuse for her present actions, but it's an explanation for them where you can understand how all of the evil you've endured might make you commit evil acts.
Yeah.
And it's very human, right? Because how can someone go through so much abuse and then be a perfect person moving forward? Of course, that's what we want in our heroes. So that's why Tarisai is the main character, who always chooses to try to be the best version of herself. But it's also understandable to see the lady and all of her suffering, and then see that she wants revenge against a child who didn't do anything to her, just to get even with the brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
I did really like that we saw the lady kind of learn too. Like it wasn't just like she didn't just like go away hating everyone still. Like she came back and she didn't apologize, but like she at least acknowledged that like that she was wrong. Especially with why am I blanking? Why am I blanking on the prince's name?
Oh, Dio.
Dio, especially with him like having like trying to rescue her.
Well, yeah.
You could definitely tell like that was such like a shock moment for her. And I also just like, I don't know, there was something so human about this story because like she just died, you know, like she died in the most like mundane almost way. Like it was an accident. And there was something kind of nice about that in a weird way. I don't know. If that makes sense.
But like, oh, being a grand villain doesn't mean you get a grand death. That we're all anything in the end. And so this person who had spent years being brilliant, a genius, scheming, like a Raybearer, died by accident.
Yeah, and the king just gets like pushed out because the one guy, I'm really bad at names. Status chose chose his love. And I was like, I don't know. I liked that ending a lot. I also really, speaking of Dio, I really loved, and oh gosh, well, who's their friend? Kira?
Oh, Kira? Oh, yeah.
No, yeah, Kira. I feel like it's kind of rare in books sometimes to find characters who are just kind. And like main characters who are just kind. And like especially having them be in positions of power. And I loved that. I loved that like there wasn't, you know, that like sort of ulterior motive, and they never like became unkind. I don't know how to describe it, but there was just like something about their characters that I just found so refreshing to read, especially in a high fantasy, where I feel like a lot of the times, like dark is equated to good, and like obviously there are dark elements in this fantasy, but like I don't know, I feel like it's rare to find characters who feel like that, who just feel like really light, like a breath of fresh air every time they were on the page. So I really liked them, and I liked that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like whenever characters come back into a story, I feel like there's always like a stress because you're like, oh, why are they back? Like something bad or important is about to happen.
Yeah.
After Senji and Tarisai go through the bush, and then they make their way out, and they're all like dehydrated and like feeling horrible, and then Kira just shows on the back of Kyung, the big tiger with Uin, and then she's like, hey, I was like,
love her.
Yeah, because she's presented as someone so kind and caring and selfless that when she appears, you're not like, oh, she's here to do something horrible and like to betray them.
Yeah.
You're like, excited. And like Tarisai doesn't even stop to be like, oh, why is she here? She's like, oh my god, Kira.
Yeah. And same with like Dio when like when she goes back at the end, like I was like, oh, he's not gonna believe her, like he's going to now be like he's gonna like, you know, be against her, they're gonna fight. Like that's what I was expecting. And I feel like that would be the normal thing to do in like most fantasy. And to not have him like just make her his equal. And the fact that she gets there and he immediately is like listening to her, and immediately I feel like one, it's consistent with his character. And I do feel like sometimes fantasy like stories will do things with a character that's not consistent with them, but in order to like add like conflict, and this just like they didn't add unnecessary conflict, and at the same time like stayed consistent to Dio's character, and I really appreciated that. It just like let us have this like kind prince. So yeah, I don't know, I loved that.
I also love Dio because he's another example of like just like Senji and Tari's side, like you're not a product of your parents. So
Yeah.
parents can commit evils and have made bad choices and be power hungry, but you don't have to continue that legacy if you don't want to. And it's all this thing of like personal empowerment and choice and agency. And I love that, you know, we just found out about Alukbade's hatred of his sister and his jealousy and his insecurity, and then you get to see Dio being like, that's awesome, I'm so excited. I
Yeah.
love the beginning that you had the Ray, like I love having you around.
Yes, I loved it. It's so wholesome.
Yes. I also love too that Dio was ace and that tells
Yeah.
on page in the story explicitly. That was something I really appreciated as well, to see a character,
Yeah.
a main character, kind of be able to just say like, I'm asexual. I don't feel, especially for a character who in the context of the story has pressure to kind of bring the next generation of Raybearers about.
Yeah,
It was nice to see.
I agree. I agree with this last comment. I love the platonic relationships are given the same importance as romantic ones. And yeah, I loved that because like at first I was like, oh, are they gonna have it be like a love triangle?
Mm.
Uh and I was like, no one's gonna be on Team Dio. Because obviously they have like a very brother sister relationship, and I really loved that like they legitimately had a brother sister relationship, in in actuality, and yeah, I loved the like you were saying, like that importance, the weight that that relationship still had, um, and how it wasn't more important than like the romantic relationship that she was also having. Um, yeah, I really appreciated that. I thought it was really well done. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do that. I feel like that's another trope that was subverted in this book, where it kind of set it up for you to be like, ooh, like she's gonna pick between Dio or Senji. It's like, oh, like Senji's like the brooding character that you always get, and then Dio's like the sweet boy next door character that you get in like every love triangle. I feel like there's those two,
Yeah.
but then it's totally subverted. Dio is, they're just platonically best friends. They love each other fiercely, soulmates in a completely platonic way. And then Senji also isn't really that brooding, and I like that. The more you get insight you get into his character, the more you see like how he sees magic in the world when they go to meet all the sprites and they see Meilu again.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, Char's like, I always knew you were the sunshine girl. Like, well,
Oh,
it's just, it was so sweet seeing these moments of these characters kind of putting after all the traumas that they've been through, and to grow them into these moments of like you said, like the lightness in the book is something that I appreciated so much throughout. Get to have little moments of reprieve from the very serious things that were going on otherwise.
yeah. No, I agree. It was so good. um, there's something else, and I'm trying to remember what it was, and it like bloop, left my head. Um, and the other big. Nope, can't remember it.
It's all good. For me, I remember finding out about the treaty when Tari Segas goes into the cave for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out that the lady had like gained the trust of this extremely vulnerable child and then used it to enslave an Alagbado and just continually do worse and worse things with this information after she really just like got
Yeah.
this child, like because he had just exited the underworld at age 11, was cast away from his family, and was in such a vulnerable position, and to be taken advantage of by a grown up is just was so upsetting. Finding out
Yeah.
one of the things I know you mentioned, like, oh, if she had just not done certain things,
Yeah.
you'd be like, okay, that
It's one of them.
discoveries. I was like, oh, and how she specifically wanted to reinstitute the imbalance between Songland and all the other regions by finding I can't remember what they're called, like I think Isoken,
Mm-hmm.
people who had parents from multiple regions, and she specifically went out looking for certain like mixes of people, treating them like math equations instead of human beings,
Yeah.
to try to recreate the imbalance against Songlin. I was like, this is so that all discovery towards like the last quarter of the book. I was like, oh, mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, no. And it's wild because like I feel like it's rare to find a book where you have like the established regime and then you have like the revolution one, and having both be deeply flawed and like understand their flawed, like even understand their flaws. I feel like that's hard to do. Um and I appreciated that. And I'm also intrigued to see like how the people who were connected to the lady, like how they play a role in the future story, like not just Kathleen and Wooin, but who else is out there who also like worked for the lady. I'm intrigued to see like if they play a part, and if so, what.
That's true, because there's 8 other people who share
Yeah.
Ray. So I wonder if they had any loyalty to her afterwards, or if maybe they, like Wu, and realized that she was just using them. They weren't picked because they were special, like because she loved them, but because they
Yeah.
for their DNA. And if they
I
all
feel
kind
like
of,
they probably haven't yet.
yeah, I'm,
It's
I'm
not yet.
super interested to see how Tarisai builds her own council in the next.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, this comparison is not really sensical in terms of story similarities, but the deadline that she has to do this extremely difficult task reminded me of Princess Diaries 2, when Mia is given 1 month to find a husband, otherwise she can't claim the throne to Genovia.
Yeah.
I mean, significantly lower stakes because lives are at stake here, but
Yeah.
that same thing where like the sequel has a very, very strict, difficult timeline to do
Yeah.
something extremely difficult. She has to make rulers of these regions love her and accept her Ray in order for her to become a redemptor acceptable to the underworld demons, so that she can make sure that thousands upon thousands of children aren't sent to their death for the next century.
Yeah. I'm interested to see like what the next book is like. Like, is it going to be entirely building up those relationships? Like, is it going to be super political and that's like the focus? Or is it going to be placed? Like, is it going to be her in the underworld or a mix of both? I'm really interested to see like what it ends up being, because I do feel like that is what the ultimate sort of like big bad in this story is. Like, you know, there's sort of like the fights between all the kingdoms, and that's stressful, obviously, but like it seems like the demons, like that's where the fight really is. So yeah, I'm interested to see like what happens there in the next one.
Just know this is a duology.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm sad now. I wanted like 10 books.
I thought it was gonna be a lot too. Then I went to go add Redemptor to my TBR, and then people were like, "Love this duology," and I was like, "Duology." But yeah,
Fine.
this one, I'm also glad that it comes out in a month though, and not
Yeah,
like a year and a half or something, which would
same.
destroy me because I'm so in this world now and following these characters that I think I would melt away if I had to wait longer than a month follow up.
I also, oh, I loved the whole theme about her name, and like, and sort of like even in the dedication, it's it says, for the kids scanning fairy tales for a hero with a face like theirs, and for the girls whose stories we compressed into pities and wonders, triumphs and cautions without asking even once for their names. And I feel like so much of this book is also like kind of a really scathing commentary and like the history of, or the way that women are depicted in history and erased throughout history, especially because there like are actually like there are women who were, you know, major leaders, and I feel like every time you read about them, it's always like, well, they were only a leader because of XYZ condition, and like they weren't actually very good, or like even if you, and that's if you're lucky to even like hear about them or learn about them. And I really appreciated that in this book. And just like her sort of fighting just to like be a person and to like have people like have her own mom like recognize her as like her own person. I don't know. I loved that theme throughout this story and the way that it was sort of developed.
Me too, actually. Yeah, that's because you mentioned earlier too, like that last scene with her mom as a shade when she finally
Yeah.
Grace High, and how what emotional weight that carried. Because for the lady also lost her name.
Yeah.
Like no one calls her by anything besides the lady, which is just such
Yeah.
a generic term. So then to get to see her daughter, I mean, even with the strife in the relationship, at the end of her journey in this story, to see her daughter rise to power, claim that that's rightfully hers, and want to do good for the world, to be like, you get to call her by her name was
Yeah.
such an emotionally powerful moment to end the book with. And I feel like a lot of series like to end books on cliffhangers. But I like that instead of doing a cliffhanger, this book chose to end it on something emotionally weighty for us to
Mm-hmm.
sit with after it ended, instead of being like, oh man, like.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, it made me feel the way I felt when I finished Song of Achilles. I don't know if you've read that. But there's like this emotional feeling, and I don't know how to describe it. I'm like, yes, this is going on like with this book. Yeah. I have no good reason as to why. It's kind of like the Princess Diaries analogy. Nothing is similar, but like a feeling, a vibe.
Yeah.
I also like also really appreciated the fact that like she acknowledged how the reason why women aren't in power or like don't have these positions of power isn't because like that's the way it's meant to be, but because like it's because men took away that power and like systematically made it impossible for that to even be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Which I also thought was really well done. Really appreciated that storyline.
Yeah, also like on that same. I love that Dio is fighting all of those imbalances without even actually trying to be a revolutionary. He just is.
Yeah.
He's not. He's not accepting Tari Sayas as equal because he's like, wow, this is a real feminist move of me. But he's just like, yeah, totally. Like you have the right. That makes sense. Let's just do it. And I love that when everyone else sees it as such high stakes, like Dio just sees it as duh. It should just be like that. I don't know why it wasn't like that. I was trying to make it like that from before. And
Yeah.
it just nice. It's nice to see that there's not a struggle for her to be like, no. And then he's like, oh, you are coming to claim my, and then you get a repeat of what happened prior to, just to see that, I don't know, that her friends, her council of people that she's already shared the ray with through Dio are all supportive of her and welcoming and are going to help her on her journey is so nice. And that there's not someone that kind of like, ooh, there wasn't a setup that someone's going to try to betray her or something. Because I feel like that's the biggest stress for me in found family tropes.
Yeah.
They set one person in the found family to become the next villain. It's so upsetting to me.
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah, I appreciate that this book did not do that. Well, I can't say what's going to happen in the sequel. Maybe.
True. True.
But so far, I am very happy
Yeah.
how everyone interacts with one another.
I also really liked this comment. I also loved that Melu told Tarisai that her purpose is another person. I really appreciated that also. Like that whole theme about like finding your purpose and how that was like what set her free from having to complete the wish. I loved that. The whole message. So good.
I hope that she gets to see Melu more in the future, because
Same.
now that they're not both bound to this servitude to the lady,
Mm-hmm.
they could, maybe she could only find a father figure that will actually be there for her. Because I feel like Olive Body maybe could have, like, she could have seen him as a father figure, but obviously things turned out the way that they turned out.
Yeah.
So finally just have a parent in her life who
Yeah.
actually cares about her well-being and can help her struggle, because even though she's grown up so much, she's still, I think, like 17 years old.
Yeah.
She's very much a child.
And I feel like he could give possibly good insight on like her next sort of journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Should be good.
I also loved the flashback to Enoba and Waruola, I think is Waruola. I can't remember her name, but the two original siblings who had the ray.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting story, and I liked that we kind of got to see how it all came to be, and how from the jump, the moment a woman had access to power, she was erased immediately, and how Enoba's presented as like the great, the kind, the powerful, and he had actually stolen both rays that were meant for him and his sister.
Yeah.
And cast his sister away to be forgotten entirely by history.
I agree 100%. Trying to think. Anything else you really want to see in book 2?
I feel like this isn't something like I'd want to see in terms of major plot line, but I would like to see Tarisai and Dio ruling together and kind of navigating the fallout from the huge political upheaval that just occurred towards the end, and
Yeah.
use, because now that they are the first generation ever to actually rule the way that they were meant to, which was with two siblings that, or I guess for them cousins, but with two people, two Raybearers, that they might be able to start balancing the world in the way that it was meant to be, and then what they're going to do with all the strife between the realms that we saw that they tried to end with the Unity Edict, and just like I like when you just get to see the mundane politics sprinkled in between the fantastical aspects, because I feel like it brings a certain realism to the story.
Yeah.
It feels more fleshed out as a world when you remember that they also just have to do actual like, and I don't know, I like to see them interact more together because I love their dynamic. It's probably my favorite relationship in the book is those two. So.
No, I agree. I really want to see more of Wooin. I just like love him as a character. I would honestly take a whole spin-off of Wooin. Like as soon as he was introduced as a like cursed prince, I was like, yes, favorite character right there. And so yeah, I really I love him. I loved his whole like storyline. I loved his like character journey, and I really want to see more like actual moments with him and Kira, because I loved those little bits we got. I was like, I want more. I want like a whole story. I want like the novella of like their journey. Like, please. I'd buy that.
Yes, I really also liked the specific magic system that was in Songland that Owen described, where he's like his flying skill, like he's like, oh, things can be taught. It's not something that you're taught. And that everyone has song in them, and that's why it's called Songland. So then everyone has some type of connection with magic and everything, and like the whole lore of like the Jinhua Pass, and how when a foreigner who's not invited by the crown enters, like the storm rages so that people can't come. Like it was all so interesting, and the whole or like all of the Redemptor orphans, that whole finding all of that out, like the sadness and weight of it all. I was just like, I would also love a novella, or even just like a short story that's just dropped as like a fun tidbit for the fans.
Just I agree.
Upbringing,
Please
love it.
I agree with this comment. I want to see Tarisai and Dio put an end to the forced assimilation. I thought that was like such a good discussion throughout the book, like showing the king like trying to force everyone to like adopt this new identity and ignore their history. And I loved Tarisai's like sort of power move at the end of being like, Uno reverse card that. I was like, love this. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how they continue with that in the next book, and how that plays out, or like the choices in this at the end of this book plays out in the next one.
I'm also interested to see if Fatis and Mbali kind of come back as characters too.
Yeah.
I feel like they're two characters who weighed in on Tarisai's life so much and provided her a lot of insight. And that is especially after he pushed Alibade off the tower. I feel like there's much to be said about how he maybe didn't necessarily agree with all of the actions he was doing, but he did it out of loyalty to his emperor.
Yeah, he did that fast. He was like, okay, bye.
Just like, but actually Mbali, so interested.
But also I'm worried about that. I'm worried about how he's going to feel, because like even at the end, like it kind of broke my heart when you like sort of read from his perspective for a minute and you saw like those little snippets of his life and like why it also was like really kind of nice to like see why he gravitated towards Tarisai, and that because I feel like when the bits that we got of him throughout the book, it didn't really paint him in the best light all the time. And then like we get to the end and we get those little moments with him and it's like you see his upbringing, you see why he was like, why he wanted to give Tarisai a chance. And it was like, oh, I was so sad. And I was like, I don't want you to have a sad ending. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But I'm like worried that he's going to like have a vendetta, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. But I also worried about that throughout this whole book and it never happened. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested to see how the rest of, I guess because the rest of the council's still alive. They're just no longer connected by the Ray because their power is gone. And I feel like, I mean, that's a lot to expect to be explained in this book. So I don't know. I wouldn't be disappointed personally if it wasn't, because of course that's a lot of information. But just to see what happens with the fallout of both the Lady and all of these councils.
Yeah,
have been.
That's got to be hard to lose that connection.
And they've had it for decades too. Not even like a couple years like the kids have, but decades. Intense.
And they lost it so much earlier than I think anyone expected.
I'm interested to see where the second book picks up. If it picks up right after the events of the first one, or if we're already like a year or two, like we're at the very end of her deadline or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I wish I had an arc.
I know. If I were to guess, I would say like probably a year in. Like I feel like she's gonna have like done a few already, because I doubt we're gonna have to watch her gather 12 people.
Yeah,
so that'd be a lot to do in a book. But we shall see.
I'm looking forward. I'm very excited to see her journey through the underworld. If that's gonna be depicted, or if she can bring people with her in the world.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's so good.
Closing thoughts. I love this book. Cannot wait for the second one. I think August 20th, if I'm not mistaken.
So soon.
Yeah, so I'm definitely doing my pre-order. I'm glad I saw most of you guys liked it as well. So very happy about that.
Same. Yeah, I don't really have any additional thoughts. I loved it. So excited to read book 2.
Me as well. So also, if you guys don't know, this month's Magical Girl Society book pick is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. The live discussion for that is TBD, so we'll update you guys on Discord, Instagram, and Twitter once we have a date set. So feel free to join all of those social media items that I just mentioned. They're all going to be below, along with my social media links and Monica's social media links. Our book pick for August is going to be Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morrigan Crow, Jessica Townsend, which is the third book in the Nevermore series. We have read the first 2 already for Magical Girl Society, so if you haven't yet, you can take some time to catch up and then read Hollowpox with us in August. We are very excited to continue on with you guys. Thank you for joining this live. We hope you had a fun time discussing Raybearer, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye.